meeting of the Transportation Committee to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Transportation Committee reviews items of interest regarding all modes of transportation in the city of Oshkosh, including motor, transit, bike, and pedestrian. We are an advisory committee, and our favorable recommendation today will go before the council. The Common Council, and our favorable recommendation today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council as needed. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this committee. If you don't agree with our decision, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the committee does not recommend an item to the Common Council, a member may sponsor a new ordinance regarding this item. An ordinance requires 2 readings before the Common Council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, August 22nd at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on the item. At that time, though, the council will take no action. On Tuesday, September 12th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to the committee for discussion and action as necessary. This committee has adopted a public participation policy which provides 15 minutes for public comment at a first-come, first-served basis. Citizens must provide their name and address and speak on matters related to transportation issues within the authority of the committee. Statements should be addressed to the committee members and not to staff. Items that are on the agenda should be addressed at the time the item is read, not during the open period for public comments. Statements are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens may only provide comment one time unless permission is granted. All written comments sent to the email address will be distributed and become part of the public record. With that, call the roll, please.
Merritt,
Here.
Hartman,
Here.
Staple,
Here.
Erickson,
Here.
Lynch,
Here.
Martin.
Here.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our July meeting?
So moved, Jim.
I'll second.
Evelyn?
Evelyn, seconding.
Any discussion, changes? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye.
Old business. We have no old business?
Did we skip public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Public comments? Any comments in general? Not about items for tonight? Nope. All right. Thank you for reminding me. New business. We have a new committee member. Deb, I've heard your name before, but I've never met you before, so could you give us a little background on who you are? And
Oh, sure. Deb Martin. I'm a retired industrial engineer, moved to Oshkosh about 8 years ago, and I was on the Parks Advisory Board for 3 years, and then wanted to be on transportation, and so, but then everything got redone, and so thank you for allowing me to now be on this committee. Transportation is a passion of mine. That was my last job was with Kraft Foods, and I was in the transportation area, but that was warehouses and semis and that kind of thing. But I'm particularly interested in all the transportation here in Oshkosh, so thanks.
yeah, thank you. Well, a side note, my daughter has chaired the Parks Committee for several years. So,
They do a lot of good stuff in our city,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
so request for four-way stop at Wisconsin and Congress. Any comments on that?
Yeah, this was from the last meeting, and Jane and I did inform the citizen that asked this, that this was our intention. I did look into it a little bit, and this was looked at before and during the planning process for the reconstruction of Wisconsin Street. At the time, it did not meet the warrants for a four-way stop intersection. So what I'd like to do, generally, for those of you that are new, generally the warrants for a traffic control device, they're based on crash history, traffic counts, site vision issues, and seeing how Wisconsin Avenue is closed, I can't really get an accurate traffic count. And there's also been, there were hypotheses about whether traffic's going to increase or decrease based on the new middle school as well as the new road and also traffic speeds. So I think it's probably prudent that we table this item until the road reopens so we can see what actually is going on out there. I can't really make an accurate recommendation until I have traffic counts and see if there's any issues out there. The only thing I can really look at now is the crash history, which I started doing a little bit, but I think we should table this until the roads reopen and school's back in session so we get some more accurate data.
All right, do we have a motion now? Yeah, we probably should have a motion to table this and then we'll actually take an action on it, so. And we're tabling it until October, so it's tabled to a specific time.
That's what I would recommend.
So October gives you enough time to see what the school,
Yeah, then I can look in September, I can get some traffic counts.
I'd move to table this then, till October.
Okay,
Second.
Jim tables. Lindsay seconds. Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye. Okay. We have a presentation of the traffic study for the Wisconsin Street corridor between the bridge and Irving Avenue.
Yeah, so the city, we hired KL Engineering to perform a traffic study on this corridor. Over the years, I've got a lot of requests to look specifically at whether a left turn arrow was warranted from Pearl, or from Wisconsin onto Pearl. But that corridor in general, the intersections are so close to each other, and then you have the bridge, which also throws a wrench into things. So we've always been hesitant to do much or to do many changes with the traffic signals just based on the corridor, and we have it. Right now, we have it coordinated the timing of those intersections. So I've got so many requests over the years, specifically from a lot of people at UWO and the UWO police, to look at this area. So the city did hire KL Engineering to do a traffic study. And we have Kelly and Jamie from KL Engineering. So I asked them to just present their study to the committee. I've already seen it, but I think it gets, so you can see it, and then it also gets it out to the public. And then we'll get into their recommendations as they go. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to Kelly and Jamie from KL Engineering.
Thank you, Jim. Can you guys still hear me okay? Okay. Jim, do you want me to share my screen, or do you have the presentation up there? Whatever's easiest on your side.
Yeah, why don't you do it on your computer? I have it as well, but why don't you do that? I'm just going to turn up the volume a little bit.
Okay. Right. Can you guys see the presentation okay? Is that working?
Oh, I don't know.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Well, if you guys can see that okay. Again, my name is Kelly Track from KL Engineering, and with me today is Jamie Delheim. We're just going to give you a quick overview of our study, and feel free to bug us with questions along the way or wait till the end. If there's any terminology you guys are not familiar with, again, feel free to stop me as I go along here. So, as Jim mentioned, we performed a traffic signal corridor study along State Trunk Highway 44, Wisconsin Street, from Witzel Avenue to Algoma Boulevard. Our goals of this were to look at potential signal phasing and timing changes to the corridor, and look at specific things like Jim mentioned, the lift bridge and that northbound left turn lane at Pearl. So what we did was we did some data collection at all the intersections, did an existing analysis, then looked at improvement alternatives, and and next steps. So that's what I'll be going through today. So some of the goals for the corridor is we wanted to maintain that good progression through the corridor. Right now, as Jim mentioned, it is a coordinated, it's a pre-timed coordinated system. And for the most part, that works fairly well as far as northbound and southbound through movements moving through Wisconsin Avenue. Look at possible improvements to turning and side road operations. Keep in mind those busier pedestrian and bicycle traffic. You do have UW Oshkosh right to the west of that. So we wanted to be cognizant of that traffic as well. Our focus intersections for this were Wisconsin Street from Pearl to Algoma Boulevard. So those three intersections that are fairly closely spaced together. And then in addition to that, we did look at Ohio Street in Whitslow, which is south of the lift bridge, and Jackson Street and Pearl Avenue. And the goal of this was mainly to make sure there is some coordination between those two intersections now, and make sure that if we do any changes that we're not creating any issues with either of those two intersections and how they come into this corridor. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the Wisconsin Street corridor, but just to remind you, it's an urban 4-lane undivided principal arterial. There's no on-street parking. There's sidewalk on both sides of the street with a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour. And then just south of Pearl Avenue, there's an average daily traffic volume of 21,100, taken a couple years ago. So that's a fairly decent amount of traffic that you're moving through that corridor. As I mentioned, UW Oshkosh campus is to the west, and then you have the Fox River to the south. So first, looking at existing traffic operations, as I mentioned before, the traffic signals are pre-timed with mainline through coordination. Pre-time essentially means that every cycle and every green time of each approach is always the same. No matter what time of day or whatnot, it stays consistent. This does help coordination of keeping platoons of vehicles together. And as I mentioned, the coordination is fairly good right now. Pedestrian recall is how pedestrian phases are activated for both High Avenue and Algoma Boulevard intersections. So what that means is you don't have to press a push button in order for a pedestrian to cross the street. They get that walk symbol each time. Right now, Wisconsin Street is operating a level service A or B, which is kind of your top rating. So that's good. And then the side streets are operating at C and D, which is fairly typical for an urban corridor with signalization. So as I mentioned before, coordination seems appropriate for corridor speeds and driver expectations. So we want to maintain that moving forward. Looking at some of the other things that we did want to try to improve or work on were the following. There's a significant lane imbalance along the corridor, so we wanted to take that into account. I don't think we're going to change any driver behavior of what lane they're going to be in, but just acknowledging that queues in a certain lane might extend longer than the other. So the big example of this is in the southbound direction, that outside through lane tends to see more traffic as people are going southbound, crossing the bridge and wanting to turn right onto Whitslow Avenue. As Jim mentioned, the northbound left turn lane has gotten complaints at Wisconsin and Pearl Avenue, specifically during the AM peak hours and events. The other thing we noticed is just the lack of vehicle detection, flashing operations during nighttime hours. Mainly this is a concern from a safety aspect as opposed to operations. And then just the delays and the reaction time of the signals resulting from the lift bridge over the Fox River. So to kind of move forward at looking at these deficiencies or considerations for the corridor, we looked at potential upgrades to infrastructure, phasing, and timing, and kind of evaluated the benefits and disadvantages of those changes. Especially with timing, if you give more time to a certain movement or implement a new movement, you're taking time away from something else. So we wanted to make sure we weren't hurting the system in other ways. And then we analyzed those improvements and developed corridor recommendations. So based on our study, recommended the following. The first one was to implement stop bar detection for side road and left turn lanes using grid smart cameras. The reason behind grid smart cameras is just because the city has used them in other locations and is familiar with them, but video or any type of video camera that's out on the market or in payment loops would be acceptable as well. But the goal of this would be to get out of that pre-timed and allow for time of day timing plans and just be able to, I guess, shut down green times earlier to move to other movements if there isn't demand. So this just makes your signal more efficient, especially during those kind of off-peak periods. You can save a lot of time to motorists by implementing detection. The second one was to install pedestrian push buttons at all crossings and provide walk indications only when push buttons are activated. So this again helps us terminate those green phases earlier if possible, and only provide for those pedestrians when they're present at the intersection. The third would be to upgrade any old traffic signal cabinets and controllers. And then kind of moving from there, the big one, I think, is that northbound left turn protected phase. We did some analysis on that. Currently, based on volumes and crash history, the northbound left turn protected phase at Pearl and Wisconsin would not be needed. However, due to the complaints and things, we did look at that and determined that we could activate that during the AM peak hour without jeopardizing the other movements at the intersection. So that is an optional improvement we brought to the city as something they could try, and we think that we would be able to make that work. Lastly, review and update vehicle clearance intervals. So those are your yellow and red times and pedestrian timings, just kind of check them to make sure they're up to standards and things. I think for the most part, they are in good shape, but make some improvements based on going to that pedestrian push button activated phase. And then, as I mentioned before, implement time of day coordinated timing plans to kind of help those off-peak periods and eliminate the nighttime flash operations. So looking at how that improves traffic, the traffic signals will now be actuated coordinated, making the signals more efficient. Overall level of service wise, we'll still get the A's and B's on Wisconsin Street and still see some C's and D's on those side streets. I have a next slide that will kind of more show those improvements from a corridor-wide standpoint. And we're hoping this will really improve mainline operations when there's less side road demand by extending those screen times. Lastly, by putting the traffic signal and actuated coordinated, that actuation will help reduce those delays following the lift bridge openings and events because they can adjust. The green times can adjust to accommodate where the demand of traffic is, and assuming there's probably more on that main line. I know there's a lot on this slide, but the main goal here is we did a micro simulation model to look at kind of total delay, stop delay, and total number of stops along the corridor of those three intersections from Pearl to Algoma, just to make sure that those improvements are helping the system. And there are slight improvements during the peak periods. These would be even greater during those off-peak periods. So as far as an implementation plan, the city would need to procure grid smart cameras at Pearl and High. They already have recently installed at Algoma. Just haven't activated any detection with that. In addition, pedestrian push buttons would need to be installed at High Avenue along with a new traffic signal and controller. Pearl Avenue right now already has push buttons, and so does Algoma. Algoma just is still on pedestrian recall. And then implement those new signal timings at all the locations. So in conclusion, there is some infrastructure upgrades that can be done to help with these timings and then implement those timing changes along with time of day plans. And our goal of these improvements would be to decrease delay, reduce the number of stops, provide that better operation during off-peak periods, and reduce recovery time after the bridge opening and events. And then lastly, again, this is more of a safety improvement, would be to eliminate that nighttime flash operation. So I kind of went through that quick, but if you have any questions, we're here to answer them or go through anything with more detail.
Does anybody have any questions? Or?
I have two questions. Thank you, Kelly, for the presentation. First question, so recognizing this is a pretty heavy campus area, and there's bike lanes, I think, that are already in that area. Did your study take a look at the impact of some of the recommendations on cyclists too? Or if there's any needed improvements for that?
So right now, that corridor doesn't have any bike lanes or anything. We didn't see too many cyclists out there. I'm assuming most of them are using the roadway. For the most part, there wouldn't be any specific improvements that would help bicyclists, but these new timings would help them, similar to vehicles, kind of proceed through the corridor in an efficient manner, but no specific things as far as bicyclists.
The one thing that would help bicyclists, though, is installing the pedestrian push buttons at High and Wisconsin. There currently isn't pedestrian push buttons there, so that would benefit bicyclists.
Second question, with the recommendation to implement the pedestrian push buttons, are there, is there data around like the safety benefits for pedestrians? Again, recognizing there's a lot of walkers and pedestrians in that area. You mentioned the benefits for vehicles, just wondering kind of what's the benefit for pedestrians with the buttons?
That's a good question. So if you put the traditional buttons in, I think the real benefit there is just more of a comfort for pedestrians. One thing we sometimes look at is just how they feel in the system. So knowing that they have something to push and they're going to get an indication that they can walk and cross the street. I also mentioned that we were going to look at walk and don't walk times. Pretty sure that currently the city covers them and meets MHCD requirements on those, but just to ensure that they have enough time to safely enter the intersection and kind of move forward. There are options if the city is interested to give more priority to pedestrians, such as a leading pedestrian phase, giving them 4 seconds of walk without any movement of traffic, or kind of looking at more accessible push buttons that kind of make noise or things like that. But obviously those do have either costs associated with them or additional delay to vehicles, but those are options that are available.
Any other questions? Well, thank you. Jim, my assumption is that you'll share this with us sometime in the future, and we'll take items up as they.
Right now what I'm looking for is just that the committee supports the recommendations, and if so, then we'll work on some of the implementation. It's going to be a little bit of what we'd like to do is we need to get the pedestrian push buttons in at High in Wisconsin before we can proceed with some of the other changes. We need to order the grid smart cameras so that we can actuate those intersections. And then, like Kelly had said, that what we're thinking is that left turn phase from Wisconsin to Pearl, that we would start by implementing that at the AM peak and see how that goes. Like Kelly said, it's not necessarily needed. However, there could be some benefit there. So we'd like to try it and see how that goes. So there's this, so what I'm looking for is just the committee support for the recommendations. There's not anything specifically that the committee would be, or the council would be enacting, because this is more, traffic signal timing changes, which generally, we do, just with the technical experts, but anyway, I wanted to give the study some light of day, get it out there, know that we've done this, and then B, just looking for support to implement the recommendations, and knowing that, you know, with traffic signal timing, it's something that we can always tweak as we need to. But I think that having Cal Engineering do this study and presenting these recommendations, I believe it's prudent that we proceed with them and then make adjustments later if we need to.
Okay?
And I guess my question is this a boatload of money to do this, or is this just not too much money? And
Sure.
if it was a boatload of money, I'd want to know more
Yep.
before I give
Yeah.
it.
No, that's a good question. So we fortunately have the thing that costs the most is the cameras, but we do budget in our capital budget every year for traffic signal equipment. So we do have adequate funding to fund the cameras. And then we will do the installation of the pedestrian push buttons, which those aren't as costly, but our city electricians will do the installation. We have the streets crew that does the sidewalk work with that to install the bases. Fortunately, we have, the short version of it is the DOT changed from one type of traffic signal cabinet to another, so they offered us the ones that they didn't need anymore. So we already have the traffic signal cabinet that we need. So really, the only costs are gonna be the cameras, which we do have sufficient budget for, and the pedestrian button, which also would come out of the traffic signal budget, but that's not quite as expensive.
Okay? Yes, Deb?
This is a question, but on that corridor all the time, multiple times a week, just sometimes multiple times a day. So it's reasonable. Everything she said, those have been observations that I have just in my personal, because I live off of Witzel, so I'm coming across there to go downtown and really anywhere in the main city area, so. And I think that the pedestrian traffic is most when the university's in session. So it all makes sense, the buttons.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So then, do I have a motion to approve and accept the report, I guess, of the traffic study on Wisconsin?
I'll move to support the recommendations of the study by the committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Sean seconds. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson. Aye. Lynch.
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, Kelly and Jamie, and then, Kelly, we'll be in touch. I know that we need to get some information on the traffic signal timing yet.
Yep, we'll be in touch, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Request for a rectangular rapidly flashing beacon at the mid-block crossing on Witzel near the Witzel Retail Center. Any comments on that from the public? I have a comment on that then. I walk that area at least 3 or 4 times a week. That's the only crosswalk between the frontage road and West Haven. So you've got 3 blocks with one crosswalk, and the letter that the gentleman wrote is quite accurate. It's traffic goes pretty fast there, and I think to get people's attention, a red flag, because I carried the red flag, isn't quite enough to get some folks' attention. So I'm just commenting that this is something I'm going to support.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll just
go
give the background real quick
Yeah.
and then make your comment. But, so over the years, we've requested, or I've received a number of requests to upgrade this crossing, which we have done. However, we've went from the traditional parallel lines to what we call a continental crossing, which is the bold white lines. as well as you've mentioned, we do have the flags there. Now, more recently, that senior living facility was constructed in the area. You know, I generally, we don't recommend mid-block crossings, and because motorists don't expect pedestrians mid-block, and they're just not as safe as crossing as an intersection. However, as Al mentioned, I see why it's there. I mean, it is quite a distance between the roundabout and West Haven, and there are the residents to the north, and then the retail center to the south. So I do see, you know, why there's a demand there to cross. So looking at this request, it does make sense, and we do have, every year, the council budgets some money for bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And so we do have sufficient funds to cover the cost of that equipment, which is about $22,000. But again, our city electricians have enough experience where we can do the installation in-house, so it's just the cost of the equipment. So that's just the background on it.
Well, and just a response to that a little bit, that there are no intersections between the roundabout and West Haven. Every intersection is one where a street is dead-ending into Witzel, either from the north or from the south. So that we don't have a really, if we had a really good intersection there, I'd support that. I'd support having something there, but we really don't, so. All right, and yeah, Deb?
Well, as I mentioned, I live off of Witzel, so I am, again, observing exactly what you say. It's 4 lanes, it's very wide, and I think we need that, the flashing, just because it isn't that far from coming off the roundabout, and people are kind of speeding up to head away from that, and so whatever we can do to make it more safe. I know on, over by the museums, when we cross the bridge there, that's Oshkosh Avenue, I think, boy, that helps a lot when I come there and they're flashing. I know to really be on the lookout for people, so I'm glad to see this.
All right, can we have a motion on this? Can someone move it?
Second.
Okay. Lindsay moved, Jim seconds. Now, any other comment on this item? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 5, update parking regulations on Kentucky Street, Central Street, and Nevada Avenue. Public comments. No public comments for that item? Okay.
All right, I don't think we'll go through all these one by one, but I will give you a high-level overview. So this is the new middle school, Bell Phillips Middle School, which I believe they said is at substantial completion as of today. However, it looks like they still got a lot of work to do. But either way, I did review this, and I also reviewed this with the school district's representative, their facilities manager. So the new school layout, what we are looking at, we had talked previously, and council had approved previously reversing the one-way streets of Kentucky, which is here, and Central Avenue. So we currently have message boards out there saying the traffic pattern's going to change next Monday, and Kentucky will then flow south, north to south, and Central will flow the opposite way. This first year is going to be a little bit challenging because they're going to have the middle school and the elementary school operating, but we'll get through it here. So what we talked about with the school district, and this kind of matches their layout, this yellow here on Nevada will be a bus loading zone. There is a curb cutout here, so there is space for the bus loading, and then this corner will be no parking. Then on Kentucky, this green section, which is the west side of Kentucky, we're looking at a loading zone there from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days. And then no parking the rest of the stretch. We did have a possible GO Transit bus stop here. we've talked with the school district. They want to initially try the GO Transit stops as they are now. This would require us to do a little bit of a deviation, but they're concerned about the traffic in this area with all the parents doing the drop-off and pick-up. And they didn't currently have enough room for us up in the bus loading area. So they want to start this way as it currently is, and then evaluate it and see if we need to make a deviation later. So that would be, so we'd have the loading zone, and then we'd have no parking. And this area will be no parking, so if we do have to do something with the GO Transit route, we'll be able to do that later. There'll be a space available there. And then on the east side of Kentucky, it will be no parking for this stretch where the red is, and then it will be loading zone on the opposite side of the streets from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the reasoning for that is for the elementary school. So this will be the middle school, parents can drop off and pick up, and here at the elementary school, parents can drop off and pick up. So that's Kentucky. Then on Central, here, this side of the west side of the street will have no stopping, standing, or waiting, which is similar to how it currently is. And then there'll be some parking allowed on the east side of the street. So that'll keep this area pretty clear. And then up here, I know that they tend to utilize this back entrance because I know there's like a playground area that here the kids use in the morning. So this would then be a loading zone from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that gives the parents another option to do drop off and pick up, and then no parking on the opposite side of the street. And then once we get up here further north, it kind of reverses what's out there. So no parking on the east side of the west side of the street, and then we would allow parking on the east side of the street. Again, it's a pretty narrow road. That road's, I think, scheduled for reconstruction in like 2025. So this will get us through this coming school year, and then we'll have to evaluate it again before the next construction comes up. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and that's what we talked with the school district about as well. This is going to, assuming the committee agrees with this, then it will go to council, and we have a lot of ordinance changes to make. I'm sure we might have missed something here or there, but this is the first round of it.
I have a question. Where are the current bus stops? If they don't take that possible GO Transit stop, where do the students currently catch the bus?
Yeah, so for the elementary, or what's currently there, is there's a bus stop on New York and
Okay.
Merrill, which is right, I want to say right here. It's right by the front, it goes right in front of the school. So there's Route 3 stops right here. And then on Jackson Street, there is a bus stop right here at the corner of Nevada and Jackson, which actually we're going to move a little bit south. There's a pedestrian crossing with the rectangular rapidly flashing beacons right here at Congress. So we're going to move that one from Nevada to Congress, so it'll be right here, and that'll be at the controlled crossing.
Okay.
So those are, and then there's also one at Jackson in New York, which is going to be a little bit further from the middle school, but not as much from the elementary. What we've observed is that we don't have a ton of elementary students that ride transit, so this one will be still real convenient for them, or obviously middle school students, if they want to get on Route 3, can take this one at Merritt. And New York, which is generally a less busy route. So we did talk to the school district about that as well, and they're going to be publicizing that's probably the best option. This route 2 that's going to be stopping here at Congress and Jackson, that comes here after it goes to North High School, so it's going to be pretty full. So we'll have to see kind of how that works. If some kids get off before there would be capacity, but the tripper route's generally pretty full. There are some students from North that do get off in this area, so by the time they get to New York, there might be a little more capacity. But that's what they wanted to try to start, and then if for transit, if we need more capacity, if that's not working, then what we would look at doing is deviating Route 3 and stopping in this area on Kentucky, which would get more students on that bus then as well.
But will the traffic with parents coming and going affect the bus? I mean, that's a pretty big piece of equipment to maneuver through all that stuff, so.
Well, currently they're stopping on Jackson and New York, so it shouldn't be a problem. But again, we don't, it's one of those things we won't know exactly what's gonna happen until it happens and parents establish their behaviors.
As long as the cars honor the bus stop and don't park there.
Right, yep, that's always an issue. I know that, I'm sure that, the police department could tell you that, but we have this issue every single school throughout the city at pickup and drop off. There's, parents, some obey, some don't, and it's a challenge the schools and the police have to deal with every day, to try to educate the parents on where they should and shouldn't be and what's the safest locations.
Any other,
How many homeowners are on those two stretches of Kentucky and Central? I'm assuming not many since we don't have any public comments here, but
Not many. Yeah, I know that, I think Kentucky, there's like maybe one or two.
okay.
And this actually, when they did the school facility plan back, a year and a half ago, they had a lot of public meetings and they did discuss.
And so the
this as
people
well.
have had a chance to have
Yeah.
input.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And when I was actually out when we reversed the one-ways, again, they all had opportunity for public comment. When I was out there doing some measurements, I know I talked to one of the gentlemen on Central, there's more rentals than homeowners on Central, but the one that owned his house came out and talked to me a little bit, and and he was already aware. I was talking, I said, the one-ways are changing. He said, yep, I already knew that. He just had some other questions, which we answered. But yeah, they're well aware of, as much as we could notice them, they've been noticed.
so really we're talking about the parking situation, the one-way issue has been decided a long time ago. So this is just how we're gonna manage parking in that area. Yeah,
Yep, parking and loading.
okay. All right, can I have a motion to approve? All right, Lindsay moves,
Second.
John seconds. All right, any further discussion on this item? Can we call the roll?
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. All right. Item 6, update parking regulations on Pioneer Drive.
I didn't pull this up, but anyway, this is actually, now that we've reconstructed the Riverwalk in that area, when we were going through some of the parking regulations, there's some really old parking regulations that we need to remove because what was Pioneer Drive there is now, part of it is Riverwalk. So we can delete a lot of the parking regulations in that area. And then a lot of the parking regulations also on 9th, when we were looking at that, referenced a lot of them were referencing the railroad and the railroad crossings, which are not in the same place they used to be. Well, the railroad crossing is, but the roads have all changed. So when 9th was reconstructed, it doesn't intersect at the same area that it did before. And then with the Riverwalk as well. So there's really no major changes here, other than we just need to change the ordinance to match what's currently out there.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing.
I assume there's no public comment on that?
So moved.
Motion from Jim. Got a second?
I'll second.
Evelyn, yeah, thank you. Any other comments on this? All in favor, say, I'll call the roll.
Merritt,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
All right, staff statements.
All right, the first, and I don't remember, if we might have talked about this at a transit advisory board before the committees were combined. But the good news is we have, every 3 years, we have a review with Federal Transit Administration. So we just had that at the beginning of this year. It's a pretty intense process. It takes about 6 months. And what they do is they review us in 22 different areas. And they have a reviewer, so we have to submit them. They issue us a request for information. We submit that to them. They take a couple months to go through it all. Then they send follow-up questions, and then they have a week review. Since COVID, they've done it virtually, but in the past they would come out and visit us, and they'd spend a week with us. So we recently did that. And then they issue findings at the end, which is stuff that you have to correct or things that they think you need to update. But the good news is we didn't have any, which is very, very hard to do. So I'm very proud of that with our staff and that we're actually following all the federal regulations. It covers things, everything you can imagine, from financial management to equity to procurement, safety, our alcohol and drug program. It's pretty intensive, and like I said, it takes about 6 months to go through the whole thing. So the average nationwide is 6 to 8 findings, and we had 0. So they did issue us condemnation, plaque, and all that good stuff. So very proud of that. So that's really good news. Now
Is the council going to recognize that at some point?
we did put it in a couple newsletters. I don't know how
Okay.
the city manager wants to proceed on that, but yeah, I will ask. But yeah, that's very hard to do. I
Well, I
set
hope-
that bar really high now, so.
Well, I hope they do. I mean, to recognize good work is important to do, and doing it in a public environment like a council meeting, I think, is something we should do. So, that's my 2 cents.
Secondly, we provided, Go Transit did during EAA, we provide shuttles from the university to EAA grounds and back. At the time that we did this report, for 5 days, we did almost 15,000 rides, so we were averaging about 3,000 rides a day. So for us, it's a good opportunity to showcase our safe, reliable system and also our drivers to interact and show visitors, our transit system as well. So, it costs us a little bit of money and overtime and things like that, but I think it's well worth it for the public relations we get out of it. So that's what happened during EAA. Then our student transit pass program rollout. I just want to remind students and parents to get a pass if they're planning on using Go Transit this year. And that's why Steve isn't here today. He's actually at Oshkosh North today, or some of our other staff is, and he's filling in. So we are getting out to all the schools for their school registrations. Today it was for people that need a little assistance with languages and things like that. So we're getting out there so that students can get their passes either at schools during their registrations or some of these other events, or they can get it at our office. So we're trying to make it as convenient as possible so students can get out there and get those passes. We've got all the information on our website and our Facebook and our social media pages. So this is another opportunity to remind everybody to get out and do that. With that, we're looking forward to another successful year there. And then finally, we've talked to the Transit Advisory Board over the years, but for those of you that aren't aware, we have completed what I call phase 1, where we renovated our current platform downtown, and then we added a operator comfort station with the supervisor office and a customer service window. We did some ADA upgrades around the current platform and transit center. We have started on what I'll call phase 2. What we are planning to do there is we're planning to add a second platform. The reason for that is that'll get some of the buses that currently board and alight on Pearl Avenue off the street. Particularly, we have the intercity, which is operated by Coach USA. They have to currently load and unload on the street. So that'll get them off the street, and also Go Connect, our microtransit pilots currently loading and unloading on the street, so they'll be able to use the platform then and get them a safer location. And it'll allow us a little room if we need it in the future. We're currently way over max on what we can do with vehicles in small space. And then also, we are looking to add a public facility, and what that will be is a climate-controlled waiting area as well as public restrooms, which, we know the good and bad that's going to come with that, but for transit riders, it makes the experience a little more comfortable. We're hoping that it'll encourage some more ridership. We did have some funding from ARPA, which is American Rescue Plan Act, that was allocated to Go Transit, that we got approval to use for this project. And then we also got another capital grant that also is federally funded at 80%. that we also got approved to use for this project. So it's probably about 90% funded currently. The next steps in that process are there's some environmental concerns because there used to be coal storage in that area, so we've had to do a couple environmental assessments. That's completed. Then we had to get approval on the environmental from the FTA, that has been approved. So once those things are done, now we are able to move forward. We do have to work on acquiring the one building at 222 Pearl. So we've just got approval from Plan Commission to start working on that. So it's quite a process. We got a lot of work we have to do up front, but that ball's rolling and it's pretty well funded. We'll have a request in for the council at the capital budget meetings to fund what's remaining, but overall it's probably only 10% of the project, so I think we're in pretty good shape. So that's what's going on as far as transit in the downtown transit center. And the final thing with transit that I forgot to put on here is we're still working on our transit development plan. We've had a few stakeholder meetings, or two, I guess, to start. And then we're also met with the steering committee. So that's in process. We have SRF Consulting and East Central Regional Planning Commission helping us with that, which is a look at our whole system as a whole. So there'll be opportunities to participate as that goes forward. We currently have surveys out on the buses, and you can also link to them on our Facebook page and our website. So it's a good opportunity for anyone that wants to give feedback on the current system. They'll be collecting all that feedback and then using that in conjunction with the planning as we go forward.
Go ahead, Deb.
Can I ask questions about the student bus program?
Sure.
First of all, so I know they're at the open house, and that's awesome. Will the students be able then to get their ID back? The whole thing can happen at school while they're there? Great. One of my questions is, does it have to be the parent that signs the form, or can a social worker in the school sign for a student?
Steve was just talking to me about that today. We haven't decided, but I think we're leaning towards letting them do that.
I mean, there are just some students that may be in a home situation not similar to others, and I urge you to consider that. The other question would be, there are some parents that aren't going to be at those open houses. Is there any way, because it's not convenient to get to where the GO Transit offices are, except for riding a bus. The people that are riding a bus so any possibility for that first week that students could ride to get to the GO Transit to get those IDs kind of thing? Or is there any talk about that, the ones
Yes.
that are going to get missed at the school?
Yeah, we are planning on having a free fair day, which I think we decided would be the first day of school, so that would give them the opportunity to do that.
Just the one day?
Yeah. We've made very, I'd say, a valiant effort to get to all the schools and to make every opportunity for students to get their passes. In that first week, that first day, we're looking at doing the free fair day. We were just actually working on that this week so that then they can get their ID if they didn't get it before then.
Because often, well, I know from having teenagers myself that they don't like to do things ahead of time. They really like to wait till the last minute, so to allow for some of that.
Yeah.
I know we'd
noticed
like
that
them
too.
not to, but.
We've noticed that as well. Like, we got this message and everything out early, and they're trickling in. It's not like, I think we expected more to come up front, but it's pretty slow. So we're hoping that today we were at Oshkosh North with some of the students that needed extra help or families and they had translators there. And what did you say, Jane? I think you did like 7.
I did 8, yeah.
The afternoon was a little bit busier, but it's slow.
Will you be more?
Others.
And will you be there then next week when they do the fair, the back to school?
I don't think that's the one that they didn't invite us to, right?
I think that they did finally. There are mainly, I don't have the schedule with me, but mostly it's at the registration days. I think that one they've changed. So that was one of the ones that we initially were planning, and they said that wasn't a good opportunity because of the way they changed it. So
Wow. I would think there'd be
I
a
think
good
that's what
portion
happened.
of students that would be riding the bus that would be at that fair with parents.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
that's the one that changed.
Change to no?
That one got canceled. August 23rd is our next one at South Park and Tipler.
Is that the school administration that canceled?
The whole event or?
Us being.
Go Transit going there. Well, they have a meeting tomorrow, so maybe, would it be okay if I ask?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Them?
We're planning on it. I mean,
Yeah.
we have
I
staff
think-
for it.
I think they've changed what they do. I don't know the details, but somehow
Yeah.
they've changed whatever happens at that event where they decided that that was possible, I guess.
Okay?
I have
Evelyn?
another question. Are these passes going to have a time limit? Are they only good for this academic school year?
Yes.
And then you start over?
Yeah, because obviously students come and go every year.
Oh, I get that. But I mean, if, you know, it could save money if you were only issuing a freshman that lasts the 4 years or the, you know, I don't know what
Their looks
cost
would
effect.
change, though, too.
Huh?
Their looks would change, too, but we.
Yeah,
have-
well, we get our driver's license for 8 years. We all change too. Come on. So I'm just thinking, you know, is this something that could be built in that, yeah, okay, I know the student's a freshman, they may or may not graduate, but they're technically eligible. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's something to look at for, once
Yeah.
you've got the first one rolled out, to see how to maintain it, maybe.
That's what I was gonna say. This is the first year we tried it, so we're gonna see how it goes, and then we can make adjustments if needed.
Okay. Any other questions for Jim? Items for future agenda.
The public comments, were they allowed for this one or not? I'm just asking, I'm
We ha-
sorry,
we-
it's my first meeting.
Well, we gave option at the beginning. There's public comment here that you want to make?
Staff
What?
report section, you do.
Pardon me?
Not during the staff report section? Are you allowed public comments on that part, or only the numbered agenda item?
Really, primarily the agenda items.
Okay.
What,
So that's not agenda.
well, what's the issue?
I just wanted to read some comments on some of the concerns that we have, especially on the student part, so you should allow me to read it, I don't know.
I couldn't understand what you said, sorry.
You just have some comments.
Oh,
On the student bus pass?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
fine, fine. All right, yeah,
Why don't you
Glenn,
come up to
go
the
there,
podium
please.
there? Yeah.
Get a whole
that's-
podium.
Yeah, that's fine if the committee wants to allow that, that's fine. Generally, how we do it is probably the best, since.
That would have been best
and
at the
I know it's
beginning.
hard to understand, but yeah, you should have done at the beginning the public comment, because the agenda items are just the agenda items, not staff comment, but I know it's confusing, so,
Right.
yeah, go ahead if the committee wants to allow it.
Right.
All right, greetings, everybody. My name is Moshe. I live on 1776 Greber Street. I'm here today to share some of the concerns about transparency and accountability related to suspension and expulsion of residents from the ridership on Go Transit. I have three general questions that I would like this board to discuss and consider. Number one, is the Go Transit implementing this different? Is Go Transit implementing a different process regarding suspension for students that currently uses for general ridership? If so, why is the process different? Number two, what information about who is getting suspended will be reported and to who? The last one is, given the realities of our kids in the school district, because we've had a lot of suspension in the school district, and there's been a lack of transparency on the other side. So I wonder whether this committee, as it recommends to City Council, whether the questions will come in to ask the two partners in terms of like transparency. How are we going to know who's being suspended from this transit? So I'll read that one again. Given the realities of our kids face in the school district and this town, there are genuine concerns about discriminatory practices and impacts on specific student populations. Are there any reporting or transparency mechanism that will be able to alleviate this concern? If so, what are they? And if not, why not? So there are 3 questions that I had for you guys. As you recommend this, if you could discuss it among yourselves before you recommend to the city council. Any questions?
Yes, if you could share that with us, and we can certainly make that a future agenda item to at least discuss and give staff an opportunity to do some research.
Yeah, so I'll just, without, this is an agenda item, so we can research it and we can report back. But just so we're clear, generally the GO Transit policies are policies internal to GO Transit. They're not something that would go to council. However, we're happy to provide information on how that works, so
Sure.
we'll get some answers and provide them at the next meeting.
Okay. Well, and I think it's good to certainly clarify, the purview of the committee, and what things we do approve and what things are not under our jurisdiction, but really within the operation of GO Transit. So I think it's good if we have some clarification on that, so I appreciate that. Anything else? Any other future agenda items? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jim moves.
Evelyn, second.
Evan seconds. Call the roll.
Barrett,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Staple,
Aye.
Erickson, Lynch,
Aye.
Martin.
Aye. I get to adjourn.
You get to vote on the